Fantastic. And you, WITZ and
I,
Weiss.
I,
That's the WITZ and
I,
Weiss Talking Human.
there we go. I am good, man. It's Monday. I look forward to the show every week. We get to talk about all these interesting topics. Today, we got an amazing guest. We got an individual
Greg,
by the
before
name.
we jump into that, I just want to
Yeah,
say, can you give everyone a double thumbs up?
a double thumbs up because I got a thumb back this week. For those that know, I had it broken a little while ago.
Yes. Yes,
Yeah,
he's out
that's
of
what
a
happens
cast.
when you put your thumbs in places that it shouldn't go.
Exactly. Speaking of
All
thumbs
right.
in places that shouldn't go, we have an amazing guest today.
Yes, we have Dr. Dennis Covier, featured on Wall Street Journal, Forbes, CBS News, New York Times, The Washington Post, NBC News, National Post, and many others. Speaks in person and virtually to over 2.3 million people on different topics of leadership and mental toughness and talent management and coachability. He's worked and shared the stage with Brian Tracy, Marcus Buckingham, Chris Hatfield, and of course, John Maxwell. So, Dennis, welcome to the show, my friend.
Oh, wonderful to be here, guys. This is great. It should be a fabulous conversation.
So what's here? We met a little while ago, and we got looped into some of the work that you've been doing around not just specifically leadership, but mental toughness, and it's an important topic, right? We're going into 2023, Mike. Looks like next year, if we're not mentally tough and resilient and focused, I don't know if we're going to survive as companies, right? So it's going to be a great sort of conversation today, and love to sort of hear some of the insights on what you think it is, and how do we develop it, and what more we can do to help people around us, because it's not just us that need to be mentally tough. It's all the individuals and relationships around us. Mike, what are your thoughts on that? You think mental toughness is an important topic for us to cover for next year?
I think it's crucial. And when you got wind in your sails and things are good, you get away with a lot of sloppy habits. I was a lacrosse player in college, loved sports, played sports my entire life. I think Dennis, we spoke about some hockey. So I always use sports analogies, and everything is going to go wrong in the four quarters of a game or three periods of a sport, and it's what happens after things go wrong on an individual basis and a team basis that determines really the long-term success. And so there's a guarantee I'm going to make. I'm going to go out on a limb that over the next 12 months, a lot of things are going to go wrong globally, in the U.S., Canada. So with that, Doc, what do you have to share?
Yeah, what is
Yeah,
mental
absolutely.
toughness? Let's start with that.
Sure. Sorry, what was the question? I
So
didn't
the
hear.
question is what is mental toughness? I mean,
Oh,
what do you
yeah,
think of that
absolutely.
next year, and what is mental toughness?
Yeah, I've seen so many great definitions, and to me, I think it's your bounce back factor. I mean, as you guys are saying, things are just changing so rapidly, and I'm 59, so when you've been on the planet a little while, you're going to realize if you live long enough, life will kick your ass off quick enough, and it's not so much what happens to us in our life, it's how we choose to respond to it that really makes the difference. And that's, to me, it's that bounce back factor. That's the essence of what mental toughness is. And in fact, one of my books, I call it, bulletproof. The key to winning in life is about being mentally tough. So mental toughness is so important. And a lot of people, they say, bulletproof. That sounds, especially with violence, and whether it's war over Ukraine or different cities where there's a high murder rate. I mean, it sounds like a controversial title. But I look at it this way. I'm using a little bit of symbolism here. In life, there are various bullets that will hit us. And the bullets, to my way of thinking, are these negative situations, these negative thoughts, negative people. So, first and foremost, I think what you want to do is you got to be a realist. You need to understand in different arenas or environments, some are going to be more positively or some are going to be more negative. So if you have a choice, why don't you just remove yourself from a negative or toxic environment or a relationship or whatever the case may be? So if there's a whole lot of shooting going on in a dark alley in the middle of the night in a strange, sketchy part of town, not the smartest idea to walk down that alley. Perhaps go towards the light, take a safer route. But within that, sometimes you can't always hide. Sometimes you gotta confront the reality. So to use that example, sometimes you got to put the Kevlar on, the body armor on. And what I mean by this is if you have to confront a situation or an individual, and again, it's not about being hard on people at all, but sometimes you've got to deal with some experiences that are not the most pleasant. At least put on your Kevlar. Get your head space in the right frame. Remember this, and I love this. This is one of my favorite quotes from leadership, but to me, it applies to being a human being, to being a friend, to being a parent. You know, it's not about being right. It's about doing what is right. Doing what is right always trumps being right. Being right is ego-based. So if you're going with the perspective that you're not walking into that confrontational, that difficult situation because you're trying to prove you're right, but rather to do what is right for the team, for that relationship, for the customer, for that circumstance, that's part of putting that Kevlar on. First of all, you're putting yourself in the right space. Secondly, it's the ability not to take things personally, although it sometimes it sure can feel personally. But also, one of the great insights is, stop shooting yourself in the foot. And that sounds silly, right? But why? Think about it. And if you don't be shot, why would you deliberately take this metaphoric gun, line up your foot, and shoot yourself in the foot? That would make no sense. And in this way of thinking, what I'm describing here is don't buy into the negativity. Don't buy into the seeds of self-doubt or limited thinking. And this is not just about yourself. I mean, understand that as a leader working with your teammates, whether you're the leader of these people or not, or it's just peer-to-peer, colleague to colleague, we need to pour in belief, enthusiasm, and genuine support to others because they're not always going to feel super good about themselves. Sometimes they'll be shooting themselves in the foot, and we need to be able to get people beyond that. So again, I think it's really important that we look at these negatives, whether it's negative people, negative circumstances, negative thoughts, as bullets. Because what do bullets do? They'll do damage. And they'll harm the relationship, they'll harm your bottom line, they'll harm your ability to super serve, come from a true client-centric perspective, whatever the case may be, and of course, self-harm. And I also believe that, this is not all about taking care of me, but I also believe from the old saying, you cannot give from an empty platter. So we do need to develop, and here's the good news, guys. This is something we're not born with, okay? So the good news is that we can at any age consciously decide to increase our level and develop our level of mental toughness and those that we want to work with.
Cool. Mike, you said a bunch of stuff there. I've made some notes because I want to follow up on them, but what's your thoughts or reply to that?
I think I agree with most everything that you said. What I love to do is basically now take it down into a personal experience. So it helps everyone understand from a knowledge standpoint, but a practical standpoint. If you look back in your life, and we don't need to go into anything that's maybe so personal, but from a business standpoint, like where did this happen where you completely effed it up? And what was the impact of effing it up? And then the follow-up question is that you realize, okay, well, that cost me a lot. What was the turning point for you to say, okay, I need to evolve? Those two questions back to back, if you can.
Oh, that is great. Yeah. So I can actually explain very well. As soon as you said that, Mike, that came clearly in my mind. So I've been a full-time professional speaker, trainer, consultant, 33 years. Very early in the business. So maybe about a year in, I was starting to get some traction. We were out in eastern part of Canada. Then we decided to shift the whole family to more central Canada, the Ottawa area. And I didn't know anybody. So, you're starting from scratch, very new in the business, no tons of money for reserves to build the business, right? Now, I had a great contact who I knew from East Coast she had actually transplanted to the Ottawa area. And she said, Dennis, it's phenomenal. You're coming here. I got a great opportunity. As soon as you land here, I want you to teach a project on project management. And the funds were good. We were starving. I mean, literally, the business was super tight. So what I did that was dumb, I accepted a gig that I should have never taken on. Okay. So that now, what the challenges with that, as I said yes, and then I start doing the deeper dive, and then I start to realize, you know, this is something I can speak intelligently about, but I am not an expert. And then I start looking at the advanced list of participants that were going to be there for these 6 evenings of a deep dive into this specific subject matter. And I literally, guys, I was so stressed out. Talk about, imposter syndrome. No, it wasn't imposter. It was fraud syndrome. I mean, and then you're worried about your brand. You're worried about your, you got people. And I remember a mentor of mine, this was so powerful. Mentor of mine, years before that, just as I was starting, he said, Dennis, do the math. And I thought, what does that mean? And I was going into 600, this was 600 people. I was talking about talent management. That's an area I'm super comfortable with. But I was freaked out because most of these people were much older than me. They're like the age of my parents. And I was brand new, just a kid. I mean, literally, guys, I tried to grow a mustache to look more, more mature. I look more manure, not more mature. It was, you know what I'm saying? But I knew my stuff. So he says, do the math. He says, how many people there? I said, 600 people. How long are you talking for? In that case, it was 2 hours. He says, well, that's 1,200 hours of human existence you're responsible for. Take it seriously. Well, now I'm really stressed. But the bottom line is I did a good job, and I took it. But using the same thing, I'm looking at these 20 some odd people, and it's going to be 6 evenings, 3 hours. I start doing the math. I'm saying I'm the wrong guy. I call up my buddy, the person she had hired me, and I try to weasel myself out and saying, hey, look, take the money back, do this, get somebody else. I'll help you find somebody. She said, Dennis, I don't have time. You got to deliver it. And I remember driving to the venue, first time, and ready, literally just pull over and be ill. I was so stressed out. And then now, there also comes a point where you say, okay, maybe you tie into a greater force or whatever. I basically said, look, I've painted myself in this corner. I am going to, first of all, expose myself to these people. I'm going to apologize. And if they don't all run away, I'll try to figure out what they want. Now, happily for me, I started off by asking a couple questions. It turns out that all these engineers, they weren't interested in PERT analysis and all this kind of stuff on project management. Their biggest concern was the human side of running a successful business and project. I said, great, that's what I can do. So it turns out I pulled a rabbit out of a hat, okay? And they absolutely loved that 6-hour program because I spoke about the human side of project management, which then it was authentic. But the real life lesson from this is to really, really never take on, don't operate from life with a point of scarcity. And I was at a point of scarcity as opposed to believing in myself, believing in that if I just super serve people, I will be taken care of. It was a great reminder for myself. And again, I'm not sure if that actually, and if you want to ask me a follow-up question of that, I'm happy to, but that was and since then I've never, ever, and I simply will not cross that line. Mm-hmm. If I'm not convinced I'm the absolute best speaker, trainer, coach, consultant for the assignment, not only do I say no, but I'll work diligently to help that client find the right person. At the end of the day, life is too short for this nonsense.
Yeah. I'll jump in. I can't tell you how many gigs I've taken that I shouldn't have taken, right? But that was part of building up mental toughness, right? Which is like, how do you rise to the occasion? And truthfully, as an entrepreneur, I grew up in the, you fucking sell it first, right? And then you figure out how to deliver it. Now, the truth to that is if you mess up the delivery, you didn't get to come back from that, right? But there is no other choice, I think, is one of the key things that contributes to us building that resilience and mental toughness. And, I think talking about today's topic and why it's so interesting is we're living in a world of soft people and weak men. And, I don't want to make this a male-female thing, but very specifically, when it comes down to what's become normalized in today's world, being sensitive and feelings being met, everything. And this is showing up in HR, showing up when it comes down to coaching people. I mean, I know we want to talk about coachability today and when it comes down to developing this talent and this resilience, but I hear stories every single day, which is like, it's becoming difficult to coach people because the simple conversation of feedback and direction is now being responded to with sensitivities and feelings and insecurities. So practically, or let me ask, what do you think are some of the characteristics that allow us to be mentally tough? I mean, this is always the interesting sort of question when we talk about topics like this: resilience, mental toughness, communication, emotional intelligence. Like, what does it look like? How do I see it? How would I know someone's mentally tough?
That is
Greg,
such a good question.
can I put a distinction in there for a second?
Sure.
I always like to twist it up a little bit. So, you shared the experience about coming from a scarcity mentality, and then, because of that scarcity mentality, taking on something that maybe wasn't best suited. The mental toughness part was okay because you forced yourself in that position. You were able to still succeed, which is great. I mean, organically, that's part of what we're talking about here. What I think I want to introduce into this, what is the mental toughness, is I believe today more so than ever because of the difficulty we have in the climate and what some of the stuff Greg spoke about, and now with inflation up and everyone's assets down, there is a natural scarcity across the board. And one of the things that I was taught, fortunately, very early when I started out in '87 in the stock market, is that there's the white side of the fence, there's the black side of the fence, and then there's the gray part in the middle of that fence. And it's pretty obvious to stay in the white because you're doing always what's right. It's pretty obvious to know, like, don't go in the black because you're going to go to jail. And what happens is that it becomes so easy as a salesperson when you're coming from a scarcity to actually, even if you're talking about IBM, to say something that's half true to get them to buy that. So you become so disciplined, if you want to stay out of jail, in never getting into that middle zone. So from what you were sharing, now I think people are dealing with a lot more difficulties in scarcity mentality. Like if you had to coach management, if you had to coach leadership in utilizing examples of where they are struggling, and what Greg was
I got a
talking
great
about.
example.
Yeah, let's get into
Great
that.
example on that. And I'm going to draw a parallel on this whole thing on scarcity, black and white and gray. Okay, so no surprise, around the world, there is a real war going on for talent. Okay, the ability to find, develop, and retain exceptional people. I mean, let alone exceptional, half-ass people. It could be, it could be good enough, right? So here, what does conventional wisdom say for most people? So what happens is when you have a tight labor market, most employers, most HR practitioners, what do? They drop the standard. So in other words, they're introducing the gray, going back to your white, black, and gray, or they're even going from the gray into the black. They do not hire that individual. I have said now, and I do a lot of work on recruiting and hiring and retaining great people. Okay. So on this, I say this: when the labor market is so tight, this is not the time to drop your standards, rather to double down. Let me explain why, okay? This is part of mental toughness, not to give up on your core values and beliefs. If you maintain your high standard as an employer from a recruiting perspective, the pushback, well, there's virtually no one to choose from. BS. BS. There are tons and tons of passive seekers out there that are looking for the right opportunity. In fact, the best people are not someone that's unemployed. It's the people that are gainfully employed and have many options. So if you keep your standards high, what happens? You have a highly effective organization. You're going to have really highly engaged people. In fact, if you don't keep your standards high, your best people will start to leave. They're going to go somewhere else. So not only did you have an initial hiring issue trying to recruit these people, but you now have an employee turnover problem because you did not stick to your guns. You did not stick to your standards, and which is a function of mental toughness. So this is where you double down, you triple down on your standards, you get creative. There's a ton of creative ways to go out and recruit talented people. In fact, by having these high standards and communicating this to all your teamwork, that you're not looking at filling a bunch of mediocre people and sticking them with you're good people, you're going to send a very clear message. But quite frankly, your internal people will become better recruiters for you. And that's what you want to tap into. You may have 100 people in your organization. One person's the de facto HR person. The bottom line is this. I mean, you're looking for people. If you don't have all 100 people, in various ways, silently, quietly looking and acting as recruiters to make employee recommendations, you're not an employer of choice. Don't kid yourself. You're not as good as you think you are. And that means you've dropped your standard somewhere. So that's a very concrete example of mental toughness. As the old saying goes, if you don't stand for something, you're going to fall for anything.
Sure.
So as a human being, as a leader, as a life partner, as a CEO, whatever the case may be, we all need to stand for something, and we need to articulate that. We have to be the living model and embodiment of that, and we have to create and protect the culture that supports that. Because at the end of the day, I don't care if you got 1,000 people. Shit, there's 8 billion people on the planet. There's a lot of good people that would change in a heartbeat if you're that good. And here's the thing. We say, our brand, the old saying that we don't own our brand anymore. With social media and everything else, we can call ourselves an employer of choice. It's our employees and our past employees that are really going to dictate what our brand is as an employer. Same thing
Sure,
with...
let me jump in a little bit here, because I think the topic of mental toughness, and like most of these topics, people don't know how to describe them or give guidance on what it is, right? And we're sort of swinging into the road of what do you do to build great culture and stuff. And this is also a very important topic. And I think sometimes the issue with this is the organization has so much pressure to make employees happy. Why? Because employees and team members are not resilient and mentally tough. I cannot tell you how many times it crosses my desk where someone is saying, I'm stressed out. Now, we live in a heightened world of stress, and our responsibility to manage that and govern that as leaders, as entrepreneurs, as CEOs, and in a lot of cases, parents, is important. In fact, I would base the success of an organization on the mental health and the emotional health and the physical health of that leadership team, right?
Yep.
So, the world is making it okay to not be tough. The world is making it okay to be soft. You know what? Your feelings matter. It's okay to be soft. This is starting in parenting, which the original term was snowplow parenting, which is moving obstacles out of the child's way. We see this happening in organizations as well. And if we're not smart about this, if we're not aware about this, we are going to flip very quickly into a culture, into a world in business, which is going to be very difficult to ask people to stretch and to, raise the bar and move forward, because that all requires mental toughness. So let's break it down a little bit, right? Let's make it practical for people.
Sure.
Characteristics of mental toughness. Like, how would we describe that? What are some of those behaviors we might see in someone?
So on that, I've done a lot of research. In fact, before writing this book, I've been kind of obsessed with these ideas. So when I've looked at this, and I've been breaking it down, and I've come up with a number of different characteristics, but it's funny, as I was sort of positioning all these characteristics, and there's 8 primary ones, and I'm going to share them with you guys in just a second. But it was interesting as I'm doing a deep dive on what I would call people from very humble and ordinary beginnings that have become successful. And successful in all facets of their life, not just their business or their careers, but loving relationships. They invest in their health and well-being. They are truly the models of what our culture would call successful individuals. Well, in order to do that, again, if you've lived more than a year or two, you're going to have adversity hit you. So no one does great things without their ability to overcome adversity. So one of the things I kept on hearing as I'm interviewing people that know these individuals, and I interviewed dozens and dozens of these individuals for my book, I kept on hearing this expression, well, look at Sally. Dennis, if you only understood what Sally has lived through to see where she is now. Sally, I mean, the inner strength of that woman is unbelievable, or that guy, or whatever, okay? And I kept on hearing this expression. It was interesting. So I looked at it, And this it works really well. So I created this model, if you will. It's an acronym, the word strength. And now I've got it right here on this book, and it's actually the 8 chapters of the book. So the word strength is an acronym, and I'll go through this pretty quickly. S is for stretching beyond your comfort zone. So you're talking about characteristics of people that are mentally tough. You got to be able to stretch beyond your comfort zone. Number 1. Number 2, T. It's a teachable or a coachable mindset. You got to, the moment you think you know it all, everything starts to shut down. Teachable mindset. Next one, resistance. So resistance and resilience. Resilience during adversity. Now I'm kind of repeating myself, but it is that element of your ability. It doesn't matter how tough you are. If you get knocked hard enough, you're going to stumble. You're going to fall. But the real question is, how long does it take before you pick your ass up and get back at it? And that's critical. The next one, emotional. Guys, emotional maturity and emotional intelligence. 2 related but different elements, okay? So we got to look at that, because if people are schizophrenic all over with their emotions, they're not going to be mentally tough. And neutralizing negatives. You look at the mass media, you look at the rubbernecking. I mean, it's such a sad commentary that we're going to have a massive traffic jam because of an accident. Not because the accident has blocked everything, because everybody's rubbernecking, all the looky-loos that are just looking and peering in through this nasty voyeurism, saying, what carnage am I looking at, So neutralizing negatives in your life, those bullets we talked about. G. The G is for being goal and purpose focused. In other words, being laser focused on your why. Okay? And we got 2 more. The last T on this is tenacity. Tenacity, guys, it's the ability to stick at it. See, because these 2 go together, by the way. The goal and tenacity. See, when you know your why, okay? Every day we're confronted with small or big challenges. And this is a choice that we need to make. Sometimes multiple times through the day. We either recommit to it or we quit. I'm going to say this again. We either recommit to it or we quit. And if we're not making the conscious decision to recommit to our why, our goals, then the byproduct of not doing that is we cop out and quit. And lastly, H, happiness, gratitude, and enthusiasm for life, for getting up in the morning, for having the ability to think and process and dream and set goals. So these are the 8 dimensions, the 8 characteristics that I have found, regardless of gender, regardless of age, regardless of culture, of religion, that are omnipresent in every single person that I have seen, that everybody who knows that individual calls that person mentally tough. And the great news is we can develop all of this. And that's really what I did in my book, is I hammered down, I explained what it is. I got self-assessments in there that people can actually go through and say, okay, which areas, because look, all of us, any person who's watching this interview today, they're going to have areas of these strengths that they are naturally strong in. Great. Identify it. Don't take it for advantage. Double down and build upon that strength. However, if someone who is watching this is not 100% happy with where their life is right now, any facet of their life, I guarantee you there's at least one area that if they could identify that and resolve that, would create a quantum leap forward in their life.
Very
This
cool.
is what I do as a coach.
I like the acronym.
Cool. And so it's a simple, yet it's a powerful way to really get introspective, whether myself or I'm coaching. For example, I have leaders that take this material and they're working with the people they're coaching, their teammates, even with key clients. And they're developing those relationships. And it's a very pragmatic way. So I appreciate the question, because now we're getting away from the theoretical into very applied.
Right. Mike, what are your thoughts?
So you have a coaching client. This is either for you and or for Greg, because you guys are coaching leadership. And it's someone that has an important role. man or woman, and something goes wrong. Missed a quarter, missed the numbers, and it's just taking the wind out of their sails. They're feeling down about themselves, second guessing their ability. There's an old saying, you don't see anything wrong until you actually start to invent that things are wrong. So then they start to see all the bad things about the company. Now you've been working with them. Like, what steps can you take? Because this will help people that don't have coaches that are watching us. What steps can you take to course correct, to just flip so that you can work through that situation? I think a practical couple steps that you can utilize, that we can share with our audience, that would be powerful.
And Dennis, what about jumping? What do you think?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so I a couple hours worth here, but okay. One specific ideology I want to share with everybody that's really important, and it has to do with how do you look at the past. Now, I don't mean the past could be what happened 2 decades ago, but the past could be what happened 5 minutes ago. Okay, because the past is the past. Here's my thinking on this: the past only serves two purposes, nothing more, nothing less. Mm-hmm. If we were happy with what happened, the past is wonderful memories. And that's your photo albums, old school photo albums, or you pull up the iPhone and you click through or whatever, right? So it's half of what the past is, it's happy memories. Now, when things went to crap, they are learning opportunities. Now, a lot of people overuse this expression, but the bottom line is this. If you see it as a learning opportunity, so, okay, things did not go. The quarterly report, going back to what you're saying, Mike, the quarterly report was a disaster. We're really short on our numbers. Not only did we miss total revenue, but margins we lost out on margins. We got killed. We lost a marquee account. I mean, it was horrible. Okay, now you can have a pity party, or you can have a pivot party. A pity party or a pivot party. And the difference between the two is really, it's a function of mental toughness. The pivot party is someone will say, wait a minute now, I didn't like the past. I didn't enjoy the results. Now, I can go in the corner and suck my thumb, seek pity, or I can pivot and I can learn from the experience, and we can do things differently. And fundamentally, it has to do with that teachable mindset or that coachable mindset. Is someone wired? Have they developed that within themselves to take feedback? Because that we're talking about, Mike. You're talking about feedback. Quarterly results.
So feedback. Here's a question for you. Okay, so you got the person, they're feeling down. Are you going to literally use one of your sayings and say, are you having a pity party, or you want to have a pivot party? Are you going to tell them, like, you're going to get to wreck with people?
Yeah. Well, in fact, I'm going to share from another book. Okay, so there's a book. I got two books that really work hand in hand here. A very good buddy of mine, Bill Whittle, and I, we wrote this book called Coachable, and I'm just going to hold it up here. Coachable: Beyond Winning Teams to Changing Lives. Winning teams is awesome. But when you think back to your best coaches in sports or whatever, they're the ones that really helped us stretch. I mean, they may not have been our favorite person when we're doing those extra push-ups or what the case may be. I come from the martial arts background. So I'm thinking of stuff that happened in the dojo with my sensei. And at times, I mean, I loved my sensei. There are many days I did not like him, okay? But years later, I have so much respect for that coaching. Why? I'm going to share a couple concepts. First of all, people say virtually everyone says they want feedback, that they're coachable. The bottom line is, folks, most people actually do not really want feedback. They want praise. They really want the praise. Okay? So how, as an effective coach or a leader or a human being, what we need to do is we need to find a way to do this next thing, to care enough to confront. I'm going to say it again. We need to care enough to confront, not be confrontational, not be a dickhead and beat up on somebody. But, okay, Bill, my buddy Bill, he gives us an analogy. It's kind of gross, but let's say you're talking to somebody and you see a little booger hanging out. And most people would say, well, it's politically incorrect. You don't want to mention that. Well, if you actually give a crap about somebody and they might be embarrassed because they need to just wipe the little smudge off or zip up the fly or whatever, hell, you do that. To me, that's caring enough to confront. And I don't mean
For me,
confrontational.
let me jump in. I jump in confrontationally because it
Yeah.
pisses me off that you got something on your face and you haven't noticed the fact that you got something on your face, and it's now my job to tell you that you got something on your face. So that's one reason I do it. The other reason I do it is because if I was ever standing in the situation, I'd hope someone would jump in real quick and be like, "You got a booger hanging on your cheek over there." Be like, "Oh, let me
That's
get rid of it."
Well,
it's
Dennis, let
phenomenal.
me ask you the one question. So, love it. I totally get it, but we're talking about mental toughness.
Yep.
So the people that are mentally tough, they're gonna appreciate all this shit naturally. Like beat my
Yep.
ass. We had a coach. We called him in college, Coach Hardass, and he beat the shit out of us, and we can't stand him. But it was only 2 winning seasons of my 4 years in college, and we can't stand the guy. After we graduated, we're like, Coach Hardass, we like the guy. But I literally know people on my team that grew up. I went to a private college that was expensive, and there were, entitled kids that were, look at this video problem here. Entitled kids that were on the team that crumpled.
Yep.
So, like, if you're in business, then like, how do you? Because you can't. It's not like a sports team where someone can crumple and they're not going to get in the game. Like, what do you
Yep.
do?
Well, there's a couple of things. First of all, I mean, you have who you have on your team, and sometimes if you're particularly relatively new to the team and you're one of the leaders, you're inheriting who you got. And I'm not suggesting turf everybody and start again. I'm not saying that. But through coaching, you can help develop mental toughness within these people. But also moving forward, as you go to hire and bring in new teammates, you want to raise the bar. You want to bring in people not just with the right competencies, but the right attitude. I mean, it can sound like it's overstated, but I have been a huge advocate of this. You hire for the right attitudes, the right core human characteristics, and you develop for competency. Now, I know, you lead the OR. Some guys or some gals got a great attitude about open heart surgery, but they've never been to medical school. Okay, that can be overdone. I get it. But all things being considered, you really have, I don't care how competent somebody is. If their attitude and their characteristics are suspect or lacking, it negates all those competencies. So we got to really understand that. Also, we got to look at the coach too. Okay, so you've got two elements at play. You got the caliber of the players. You also have the coach. I think very early in the game, and the game could be the start of that new business or the start of that new employee's tenure with your organization or the start of the next quarter. I don't think as a coach you should prejudge what position someone's going to play on the field. Are they going to be a starter? They're going to be a sub? They're going to be a star? What are they going to be? I don't think you should prejudge that. But this is what I think great coaches do. They have a heart-to-heart conversation with each player, one-on-one, and they say, well, listen, great that you're part of the team, but where do you see yourself? What do you want to be? Do you want to be a star? Do you want to be a sub? Do you want to be a star? Whatever the case may be. And then once you understand what they want, then you say, okay, but are you prepared to pay the price? Because there's a price for every position. I'm not talking about being a halfback, fullback, quarterback. I'm talking about really within the capacity. Where are you going to play in your game? And that's not my decision to prejudge as your coach. You're a player. You got two names on your jersey. You got in the front of your chest, you've got XYZ Corporation. But on the back, you got Smith. I think you need to be playing with pride for both names. For the company, the team is also yourself and who you represent as a human being, okay? But so I'm going to have that heart-to-heart conversation as a coach. I'm going to ask somebody, what do you really want? And then through reality immersion, I'm going to immerse them into the reality and say, listen, I'm not judging. You want to be a star. You want to be a key player. Hallelujah. We need those. However, we got to make sure you got a realistic understanding what that really looks like And I got to ask you, human to human, are you prepared to pay the price? I'm prepared to coach you. I'm prepared to create the environment. I'm prepared to make sure you've got the right equipment, the knee pad, shin pad, whatever, computer, whatever you need to do the job. But I'm going to have a real heart to heart conversation with you. And we're going to make an agreement. And the agreement is about mutual accountability. See, I created with this thing called the spectrum of
I have
coachability.
to jump in. I have to jump in
Yep,
because
awesome.
I disagree entirely.
Okay,
So I
cool.
think as a coach, you should judge. I think it's very important that we immediately are able to identify talent and assess whether someone has the will, the motivation, the capability to do so. I think when it comes down to being coachable, I coach all day. It's all I do, right?
Yep,
And I'll tell you, 50% of my clients are uncoachable, right? What they want to do is they want to talk, they want to work through things. They don't want to do anything different. They just want to sort of work through, and that's cool too.
yep.
And then the other 50%, yeah, they want to do the work. But I think the danger in what you're talking about today, and it's not to knock, I agree with a lot of you're saying, but where I disagree is I think if we're not careful, we do the exact thing that doesn't allow people to be mentally tough because we are going, let's ask you what you want to be and where do you want to grow and how can I help you and do
Okay,
you have all
so
the resources and all this stuff and these heart
I
to heart
agree with
conversations.
you. I think we're actually saying the same thing, Greg. Let me just
Right?
help us clarify this, okay?
Okay,
Because I'm
jump in.
100% with you on that. What you're describing is when you're starting in fresh and you're building the team. Absolutely, there's a lot of prejudging. In fact, you're out scouting. You're out recruiting and you're interviewing them before they even know they're being interviewed. 100% agree with you.
Right.
The example I gave, as I said, all too often you inherit a team. So
Should
then, when you're
fire half
inheriting a
of them right
team,
off the bat. I did. Listen. This is how I built my business. I took over a $600,000 bankrupt business, my
yep,
father's business, which I bought for $1. I had 15 of his employees, which were just vampires, which were just on the financial teat, sucking and
yep,
sucking and sucking.
yep,
And the first thing I did, and it cost, by the way, in severance, a couple $100,000. So I'm now sitting at minus $800,000 on day one.
mm-hmm,
And I got it because you got to be able to make that call. Like, I mean, if we're talking about mental toughness, there's a lot of responsibility on that leader, that organization, to make some of these calls, right?
yep,
And this in a lot of cases is, I might argue, what builds resilience, what builds mental toughness. Things allow people, we want people to stretch, we want people to be coachable, we want them to be goal
yes,
oriented, we want them to be happy, we want them to be accountable. I think all of those things are important, but mental toughness is a result of what you've gone through and whether you've persevered through those things,
yes,
right?
right,
And I think mental toughness, if we're not careful, becomes one of these things that we pretend we can teach. I think we can create things that allow people to grow through this, but I think we got to be real careful about, in some regards, expecting people to be mentally tough. And my point about bringing earlier is we live in the social environment where it's become okay to be soft, right? And while everyone's running around this world being soft and we're catering to this, right? Are you happy? Are you just happy? Because if you're happy now, we can talk about your coachability. Is maybe we need to come back to a little bit of what Mike was saying, which was, I had Coach Hardass for 2 years. We won 2 championships. Hated my fucking life. But guess what? Like, that thing has allowed Mike, that experience today, when he in college, has contributed to Mike's success in his financial career on Wall Street, all the way through being an entrepreneur and
yep.
building a business, right? So
No, guys, I'm 100% with you. I do not think that we're divergent on this at all. One of the things I shared with you that was foundational: care enough to confront.
mhm, I agree. That's a
and
good
and that
line.
and you
So,
got to lead with that. You got to lead with
yeah.
that.
So I'm going to share one personal story, and then I think we
And we
should
got to start to
maybe
wrap up.
start to wrap up. But this is kind of along the lines of what we're talking about now. So I have somewhere in the low 50s in my company, and it's all virtual. I've had people with me for almost 10 years, 8 years, and we hire a lot. So I've always been fascinated by Jack Welch's. Every quarter
Mhm.
I eliminate the bottom 10%,
Uh-huh.
and but I never did anything about it. And you know, the higher slow, fire fast. I suck at hiring. I just don't have the patience or the time to do it. So I hire, and then I probably make the mistake that everyone does. I hold on to people because I believe in people, and then I fire. I fire slowly. So, bottom line is, 6 months ago, Greg and I were talking about this, and I basically said to sort of the department heads on both sides of my business, I said, you know what, that's it. This month, we're letting go of the bottom 10%, and the me preparing to have that conversation was like a day or two, and I felt bad about it because I was mentally weak. But then I was like, no, because I'm responsible for the results of the organization. And we got rid of, I don't know, 3 people, and the 49 others. Because literally, I think every one of the people that are in my dispersed workforce around the world are relying, it's paycheck to paycheck, meal to meal, if it's food for their family. So then when I told them, and I then got off my Zoom, I was like, you know what? I felt empowered by it. And so now every quarter, that's like, once you mentally, it's like what you're saying, it's your mental toughness. Once you get in and say, okay, this is how I'm going to operate, then it becomes practical. So
on that, if I can just offer a thought on that, because
yeah.
guys, I'm 100% with you on that. One of the things that I write a lot about is never treat your people equally. The concept of, you need to be fair. You need to, you need to have an open and fair playground where everyone has the opportunity, but never equal. So, I mean, it's the whitewashing down, if you will, to the lowest common denominator. It's destructive for your business. We all know how that's going to kill the business. Also, think about how insulting it is to your peak performers that your superstars are being treated the same way as your duds. And I'm a huge proponent. You want to be you want to be fair with everybody.
Yeah,
But
look at
you
Tom
don't
Brady.
treat your people equally. Absolutely.
Yeah, Tom
And
Brady in
you
the
need to call it. Sorry,
preseason.
go ahead.
Tom Brady in the preseason, he had to take 10 days off. Nobody else in the league can do that, but he's Tom Brady. He earned it. So that's
Right.
interesting perspective.
Yeah.
All right. We are coming to the end. Dr. Dennis Covier, thank you so much. It's been very insightful today, and your examples. I love your acronym. I hope for the audience they got a lot of insights and some perspective to use. Mike, what were some of your takeaways from today? What were some of your light bulbs that went off?
Well, yeah, I like everything that the good doctor shared. The last bit right here I really love, which is treat everyone fair but not equal. And I'm going to think about that a little bit, because that's sort of the next level. Because you do have superstars, and you want to keep them and make them happy and get more of them. So I like that.
Cool.
The byproduct of not doing that, by the way, is the notion of the weakest link, right? Well, if you start pandering to the weakest link, the byproduct of that is you're going to take a big honking chain and reduce it to a useless rope.
Correct. Correct. That's a great
Greg,
analogy.
give us a wrap up, Greg.
Yeah,
And
my
then
takeaways for today were I think we have an ultimate responsibility as leaders to make the real hard decisions and walk the hard line, because it's the ones behind us that either become weak or stronger from that. And if we're not careful, we end up creating dependence in our effort to create tough, resilient individuals. So it's a very important topic, and that's why we wanted to chat with you today. All right, to the audience, if you like today's episode, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and comment. Dr. Dennis Covier, you can find him on LinkedIn. Go and check him out and follow. Go ahead and check out, obviously, Mike Weiss, and CEO of Cloud Selling, or you are the CEO of Cloud Selling, I should say. And of course, I'm always available around on social media as well. And so that's it. Thank you for joining us today. We will see you next Monday at 2 p.m.
all right, over and out. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.